Casey, how are we? Back for another week.
Back again. Back for another week. This is week 9. We're in week 9 in the NFL. That's our 9th episode. We're halfway
Flying
through.
by.
Halfway through, right?
Crazy. Crazy. Feels like the season was just kicking off yesterday, and we already are at the trade deadline. And I guess that brings us into the first point of the show, the week 8 rundown. And obviously, the most important thing going on in the NFL right now is the trade deadline. It just passed last night. The marquee moves, the Commanders selling both defensive ends, Montez Sweat for a second-round pick to the Bears and Chase Young for a third-round pick to the 49ers. Casey, I know how you feel about these moves. Two great young edge rushers going to the NFC, staying in the NFC. What do you think?
So we had this conversation on Box Lunch today. Elliot thinks that the commissioner should veto the trade that was made between the Commanders and the 49ers. And I have to agree. I genuinely have to agree. And I don't think a commissioner can actually veto. It's more of like a fantasy play, a play on fantasy terms. But that is just a ridiculous trade. Chase Young makes that defensive line the best in the NFL by far, and maybe the best all time. I've already said that it was unfair. The defensive line, the defense itself was pretty much unfair up to this point in the season. They got massacred by the Bengals, or they should have been massacred by the Bengals, and now they go and get another top-end defensive end. Jacob, I don't know what the league is doing. I made a tweet saying, WTF, what are we doing? Third round pick? Are we serious? So
Yeah, look, I'm a huge Chase Young fan, and he started off really hot, winning Defensive Rookie of the Year his first year in the league and putting up insane numbers. But look, he just hasn't played since then. A third-round pick is exactly what I expected Chase Young to go for. If anything, I was a little bit surprised that it was a third-round pick. I thought it would be a later pick even than a third when Montez Sweat went for a second. Montez Sweat, in my opinion, far superior to Chase Young as an edge rusher in the NFL. He's played more, and he's been more productive in the games he's been on the field. Look, I love Chase Young, and if he can return to the form of his first couple years or even what we saw at Ohio State, you're absolutely right that 49ers D-line is going to be the best we've ever seen. But who knows if he can stay on the field. So I think that day 3 draft compensation is right about where I thought he would land. The more interesting one to me is Montez Sweat, because that's a second-round pick for a guy on the last year of his contract. If the Bears don't get a long-term extension worked out with Sweat, you have to wonder if that's going to go down as one of the worst trades of the last 2 years for the Bears, which is crazy to say because this time last year they traded a second-round pick for Chase Claypool. So it obviously isn't going to be worse than that, but it could get in that same conversation if Montez Sweat turns around and walks in free agency after just a handful of games with the Bears. A couple other moves sprinkled throughout the league. I know something that we've focused on this show is the Lions needing a second wide receiver. Well, they went out and got Donovan Peoples-Jones from the Browns. He hasn't been incredibly productive in Cleveland, but he was a great player at Michigan, and he's shown flashes in the league. I think he can be exactly what they need next to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Still hoping for Jameson Williams to break out.
yeah, I agree. I think another really big trade that happened, Jacob, Ezra Cleveland to Jacksonville to shore up that offensive line. That was a great move. Leonard Williams to Seattle. That's another great move for Seattle. Shoring up that interior, that front seven, making sure that it is a dominant force now. There's a lot of trades I like. There's a lot of trades I don't like the Montez Sweat trade. I think the other one that was very questionable to me was Josh Dobbs going to Minnesota. I get why, but does Josh Dobbs really provide you that much more? I get it's a late round pick, but it just doesn't make sense for me. If you're going to try to still compete, you don't get Josh Dobbs. You get something else. You get someone that's a little bit more established, like Jameson Winston or whoever.
Oh, I totally agree. And the comments that Kevin O'Connell made today about wanting Kirk Cousins to come back, I think make that Dobbs move make a little bit more sense. I think he's just going to tread water this year. They have no intention, it seems, of drafting a quarterback. So tanking for a top 5 pick doesn't seem to be something the Vikings would be overly committed to doing. So I think Josh Dobbs will keep that team afloat, make that offense a little bit relevant when he takes over, not this week, but the week after. Second thing that happened this weekend, Casey, the worst game of all time on Sunday between the New York Jets and the New York Giants, but they don't play in New York. They played in New Jersey. Casey, this game was just absolutely horrible. Neither team could really move the ball at all. You see Zach Wilson take the Jets on a questionable last drive to kick a field goal to go to overtime. I mean, Casey, I don't know if you were watching this game. I hope you weren't. But boy, what a stinker on Sunday.
Yeah, I can confirm I did not watch. And it wasn't that you said it was questionable. It was a questionable play or like a questionable reffing decision, right? What can you
Yep. So on
expand
the
on that a
last
little bit?
play there, Zach Wilson hit, I forget the receiver, I believe it was Alan Lazard down the field. And as you do when the clock's running down and you're out of timeouts, the whole Jets offense sprinting down the field to hopefully clock the ball before the time ran out. Well, the receiver hands the ball straight to his center. The center gets in his stance, hikes it to Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson spikes it with a second left on the clock. Jets kick the field goal all as well. Well, if you remember the playoffs last year, Dak Prescott had a very similar situation. Well, the ref came in, moved the ball back to officially set it, and the Cowboys ran out of time. That did not take place on Sunday in New York. If the ref would have set the ball the way the rules lay out that he's supposed to, the Jets would have ran out of time. So the NFL said that he tapped the ball and that justified a spot. My understanding of the rule going into Sunday was what happened was not supposed to happen, and the ref actually has to hold the ball. I don't know if that's true or not. Bengals legend Boomer Esiason, certainly on my side, he thought it was very weird. He was the first one I saw pointed out on Twitter. Casey, I mean, this is just stuff that can't go wrong. We talked about officiating all MLB season being an issue, and now halfway into the NFL season, it's rearing its ugly head again. We're just talking about officiating more and more in sports, and it's becoming a really problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to even fix that problem, right? Like, there's not a thing to do to fix that specific issue. Like, you're not gonna get faster. Well, you could get younger refs to maybe run up there quicker to set it, but like it's about like hustling. Like the refs didn't get there in time to like officially
Well,
set it.
honestly, I think it's a full-time issue. Refs are part-time. This is an understanding of the rules. If these refs are full-time, you know you have to set the ball. Like I have a hard time that a multi-million dollar, billion-dollar league like the NFL has refs calling and deciding games on Sundays that are gym teachers and mechanics during the week. It's ridiculous that these refs deciding outcomes and gambling now, obviously a huge deal in the NFL, and they aren't even full-time. It's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, that you're right. Refs need to be paid full time, or they need to be paid better. Something needs to change for that to happen. Another shocking event that happened: Mr. Unlimited shocks the world, beats the Chiefs, and on top of that, it was a blizzard. Blizzard. I had money on this game, and I was very shocked to see, like halfway through the game when I tuned in, that there was no snow on the ground. I was like, what is going on? I've made a mistake. Turns out, ended up hitting the under hit because Mahomes did not have a great game. He was feeling under the weather. But 24-9? Are we kidding? What was that about, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, this was truly a shocker, I think, to everyone. Patrick Mahomes had never lost to the Broncos, and especially this version of the Broncos, who lost by 50 to the Dolphins earlier this year, a putrid defense that was the bright spot of the team last year, and they hold the Chiefs to 9 points. No touchdowns, 3 field goals. Just an unbelievable game from the Broncos, and one of my good buddies here at school is a big Broncos fan, and he told me that this is where their season turns around. This is where Sean Payton and Russell Wilson turn into what Broncos fans expected. I'm certainly not going that far. I think this is the definition of a fluke game, and the Chiefs will return to the top of the league, and the Broncos back down to the dumpster. But if you are a Broncos fan, you've had an enjoyable week. I'm sure you're finding all the sports shows, listening to all the ESPN cut-ups, talking about how good the Broncos looked on Sunday, because it's been a while since they've been a competitive team.
Now, a different team that has been up and down this season dominated on Sunday and dominated a team that I had declared unfair at the start of the season. The Bengals absolutely thwart the 49ers and everything that they were trying to do. What a game. What a fantastic game from the Bengals. Joe Burrow officially all the way back. He was 28-32, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Offense was clicking, firing on all cylinders. He was able to go under center. Defense was alive. They were just tearing it up. Jacob, what are your thoughts on this game before we go any further?
4 incomplete passes, like you said, just an unbelievable day through the air, but he also added 40-plus rushing yards on the ground with his legs, and you saw that not only on scramble plays, but even QB draws. That's something we haven't seen from this Bengals offense this year, and really in Joe Burrow's career. The run game has not been a huge part of his game, and now it seems like we're going to open that up. And going into San Francisco, this was an outcome I don't think anyone thought was possible. Sure, people thought the Bengals would win. That was definitely a possibility, but to dominate for 4 quarters, 60 minutes up and down the field, finish with 31 points, and you really should have had more. Unbelievable to say. This is maybe more surprising than the Broncos win, how we really just shut down everything the 49ers tried to do on Sunday.
That's right. That's right. And I just want to quickly say hello to some of the people in the chat. Just Jack Butler, Iron Force, Excalibur Iron Force, Sir Boy, Mark Fetters, Justin, thanks guys for tuning in. Big love, thank you for tuning in. Lure Up, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to keep going with our rundown. We had a battle of the number 1 and the number 2 in this year's draft. We had Bryce Young.
And the number 3. Will Anderson
right.
as well on the Texans for
right.
the first time ever, the 1, 2, and 3 picks playing in the same game.
That's kind of crazy. I didn't even think of that.
Unbelievable.
That's very unique. Scoregami-ish, right? Number 1, number 2, and number 3 all going at it. And I was surprised with the final result. The Panthers get up their first win of the season. They're not going to lose every game like I thought they might. They're not that bad. But I was surprised at how poorly our guy for the Texans, former Ohio State quarterback, can't remember his name at the current moment. I'm drawing a blank. CJ Stroud. He didn't play very well. He didn't play very well against the Panthers, and that was very surprising to me.
You're absolutely right. Look, I really wanted CJ to go into Carolina and prove to the team that passed on him that they made a mistake. I thought he was going to go have a really big day and lead the Texans to a victory, and that just wasn't the case. Bryce Young played the best game of his young NFL career, truly outdueled CJ and came away with the win. But look, CJ's a rookie. I'm not worried about it. There's bumps in the road for every young player in the league, and the last time the 1st and 2nd overall picks faced off, Zach Wilson beat Trevor Lawrence. So I wouldn't take too much in the outcome of this game when evaluating these two quarterbacks.
Yeah. I think eventually they'll get to where they need to be. I think Bryce Young has started to turn a corner a little bit. I think CJ Stroud already shown that he can play in the NFL at a very high level, so I'm not too worried about these two guys. And now we get into some of the stuff that broke earlier this morning. McDaniels out, fired. That's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. This should have happened. Actually, I don't think he deserved a head coaching job to begin with.
No, you're absolutely right. Josh McDaniels is one of the worst coaches in the league the minute he took over the mantle in Las Vegas. The big question I have is why now? I feel like Josh McDaniels has proven time and time again over his tenure with the Raiders that he was not the man for the job and he was not a competent NFL coach, and they just continued to let him stand on the sidelines and call plays. So if they had the money to fire him, if they had the money to pay out the rest of that contract, why did you wait? Why didn't you fire him in the offseason? This seems peculiar to me. I know we noted before the show, but the GM out as well. I think it might just be time to clean house. There was a report somewhere that Mark Davis had met with Max Crosby and Devontae Adams and said that he was going to pick their side as opposed to the side of the coaches right before firing McDaniels. Don't know if that's true or not, but that's certainly something that would be very good for Vegas fans to see, siding with your 2 star players over a coach that truly couldn't get it done. So I think exciting times, and things are going to get better out there in Vegas.
Yeah, and I decided to do a little research after the show on Box Lunch, or maybe it was during Box Lunch, but the Belichick coaching tree is very much below 500. Like, maybe even below 250. They're that bad. The coaching tree for Belichick has not been pretty, and this is just another addition to that very poor list. And on top of that, someone mentions Sir Boy Harbaugh to the Raiders. Maybe, I don't know. That would be an interesting fit. Two very big personalities.
I really think Harbaugh to Chicago to be the Bears' next head coach is all but a done deal. So all the other speculation is certainly fun, and him in black and silver would be exciting, especially with Devontae Adams and Max Crosby. But I really do think he's going to be the Bears' head coach next season.
We'll see. And then finally, we get to our last point. The last part happened, pretty much the last thing that happened today in the NFL. Y'all can dance on my grave. Desmond Ridder was benched for Taylor Heineke. Now, I got to just say and preface that he was somewhat my guy. I was rooting for him, but he wasn't a guy I thought could be a NFL starting quarterback. I just thought he would be a general manager type role until they found a guy. His time's over now. And Taylor Heineke now starts for the Falcons. And we'll see maybe a little bit more dynamic play. He's a little bit more known to run around, extend plays. Ridder kind of struggled with that a little bit out of structure. So I'm very interested to see what Taylor Heineke can do with this team. And I
think Taylor Heineke definitely gives them a better chance to win than Desmond Ridder. Just from what we've seen the first couple of weeks, the mistakes, the turnovers with Ridder was just, you couldn't have it. And hopefully Heineke can just, take in that gamble a little bit and just use the weapons they have. And like you said, game manage.
Yeah, and Heineke too, he's been proven to at least get a team to the wild card. So.
Right. And now with the Falcons sitting there with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke switching back and forth at starting quarterback, have to remember back this summer when Lamar Jackson was available for 2 first-round picks, and the Falcons were the very first team to recuse themselves and say, we're not interested in paying that high price for a quarterback. So down in Atlanta, I hope you enjoy Taylor Heineke the rest of the year because you could have had Lamar Jackson.
Ouch. Just throw that one in their face. That was a shot. That was a stray for the Falcons fans. Rise up from that one. Ouch.
Rise up.
Hopefully, they're able to just kind of tread water until next season. But on to the slate of games that we have today. We have 4 games. We're going to start with the Dolphins versus Chiefs in Germany. Jacob.
That's treasonous. Treasonous. There is no reason that we should be sending 2 elite teams, 2 electric offenses with stars all over the field to be playing at 8:30, 9:30 Eastern in the morning. That's ridiculous. Give me this game in prime time. I see people in the chat bugging out about the Giants and the Raiders having primetime games, and we're sending the Dolphins and the Chiefs at 9:30 a.m. kick. Send the Jets and the Giants over there. I want this game in the States, but that's enough with my complaints about the Germany game. This is going to be a great one. I mean, the 2 teams at the absolute top of the AFC. The Dolphins offense just hasn't really been what it was to start the year lately. It seems to really just be the Tyreek Hill show on the outside, De'Von Achane on the IR, Raheem Mostert coming back down to earth on the yardage front. Casey, how do you feel about this Dolphins offense flying all the way out there to Germany to take on the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, it's you kind of said it. It feels like it's just the Tyreek Hill show. And if you can limit what he's able to do, it feels like the rest of the offense isn't pulling their weight just yet. I think we saw early on in the season what that looks like. I think we saw when De'Von Achane is healthy, Raheem Mostert, those 2 together make a really dynamic rushing attack. And then, I think they've really not been able to get Jalen Waddle involved as much as they did last year. I don't know what that's about. But those are really the only 3 or 4 guys that are doing anything on this team. The rest of the team is just kind of like happy to be there. They're happy to be there. And I can't fault them for that. I don't know if that's a scheme thing. I mean, Tyreek Hill even said last season that he's going to get 2,000 yards this year. He's on pace to do that. But I was expecting more. I was expecting this to stay a little bit more consistent. It's kind of fallen off. And on top of that, it feels like they only do it against bad teams. When they play against a good team so far this year, the offense has not been nearly as explosive.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think part of the issue with having a player as electric as Tyreek Hill, an issue probably is not the right word, but you fall into the trap of getting him the ball too much sometimes. Look, I know when he has the ball in his hands, he's probably the best player in the entire NFL. But if you're going to throw to him every single play, then the other team's going to be able to check in and key in on that and just try to take Tyreek Hill out of the game. And that's certainly not an easy task. But when you have players like Jalen Waddle on the other side, you have good tight ends, you have good backs. Tua is a heady quarterback who can read defenses and find the open receiver. I think they really need to just open that offense up and stop relying quite so much on Tyreek Hill. You saw it this last week, Jalen Waddle with his season high in targets, 12 targets against the Patriots, 7 receptions, 121 yards. His best game of the season by far. I know he was banged up there for a stretch at the beginning of the season. Hopefully, as he starts to get healthy and be comfortable in the way that offense is going right now, it'll start to even out and everyone's touches will kind of find level. But right now, you're absolutely right. I think getting the ball to their other playmakers will actually be a benefit to everyone, including Tyreek Hill. I think being able to work him in as kind of a decoy in some scenarios will let the plays that are designed to go to him really take off.
Yeah, and another thing, too, to add on to this conversation, why I'm a little worried about the Dolphins. This matchup particular with the Chiefs, right now they're playing like top 5 defense. We'll get more into it in a minute. But Trent McDuffie, he's been able to shut down your number 1 receiver all season long. And on top of that, this team can get after the quarterback. And that's something that they've been able to prevent to this point. They've allowed Tua to not get hit as much, definitely not sacked nearly as much as he was last year. But I can't see that continuing much longer. I mean, their schedule only gets tougher and tougher as the season gets along. And where's Armstead? Is he hurt? Is he in and out of the lineup? Like, you never know what it is week to week. He's always banged up. I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about their offense. But I think the bright spot, or the thing that's going to continue to improve, is their defense, which is what we're going to talk about next. Jalen Ramsey's back, man. He looked better than ever.
Yeah, he looked absolutely unbelievable. A pick in his first game. Mike McDaniels said he was mad at Jalen Ramsey because Ramsey promised a pick 6 but only delivered a pick field goal. I love Mike McDaniels. He's such a funny head coach. Easy to root for. Jalen Ramsey's just a crucial piece to that defense. We talked about how their secondary relied so much on Xavier Howard to just eliminate a receiver. Well, now with Jalen Ramsey, you have an elite cornerback duo. You can take a lot of the pressure off the back end safeties and the other corners because those two guys can hold their own one-on-one on the outside. I think that's exactly what Vic Fangio needed to really get this thing going in Miami on the defensive side of the ball. And Jalen Ramsey looks like Jalen Ramsey. Sometimes with those Achilles injuries or sometimes with those knee injuries, you don't come back right away and you're not productive right away. It takes some time to really, get off that mental block of getting hurt again or whatever that might be. Jalen Ramsey doesn't seem to have any of that. He played absolutely great on Sunday, and I expect more out of him. He's so fun to watch. The league's better when he's out there playing corner. It's great to see him back.
Absolutely. And it also helps that he's got a pretty decent pass rush to work with too. He's had great pass rush help throughout his career, but the combination of Bradley Chubb and when Jalen Phillips gets healthy again, those two are some of the best in the league. I would say they're probably like a top 10 edge rushing duo. They love to get after the quarterback. And I think that defense is just getting better and better as the season goes along. So that's the bright spot on the Dolphins, is that they're starting to become whole. They're starting to play complementary football in a way. But I'd love to see them do it.
And they're going to get healthier.
Yeah. And I would just love to see them do it against a top talent in this league, like the Chiefs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And I mean,
their 2 losses are to the 2 competitors that they've played so far this year. So it's hard for me to really get past that hurdle when talking about Dolphins as a Super Bowl contender when they haven't put in front of us a game against another team of that caliber. So this is a big test for the Dolphins. I don't know what their schedule looks like the rest of the way out, but I have a feeling that we're going to not see them against another contender for a while. So, yeah, after this, they have the Raiders, the Jets, the Commanders, the Titans, and the Jets again. So if they lose this Chiefs game, we could be talking about this Dolphins team with a really gaudy record sitting atop the AFC in a couple weeks, but still just no games against really, really good teams on their resume. So this is a big test for the Dolphins and something I really, really need to see them come out of with a win.
Right. And I think on top of that, the Chiefs, like I said, they get after the quarterback. They play the Jets. They can get after the quarterback. Titans, they can get after the quarterback. Jets again. Cowboys, Ravens, Bills. Like they have a lot of bad matchups in that department moving forward. If they can't get it done against the Chiefs, which we're going to talk about the Chiefs here in a second, I have a hard time really believing in this team. I just do. I'll have doubts about them for the remainder of the season until they prove me wrong otherwise. But they have a really easy task, at least on defense, from what we saw last week. The Chiefs' offense is struggling, man. It is struggling mightily.
Yeah, 9 points against the Broncos. We just talked about the Dolphins, who scored 70 on that same Broncos defense just a few weeks ago. So certainly not what you want to see in Kansas City against a unit that was certainly struggling. Kelce just absolutely disappeared. I mean, unders across the board on his lines. And you have to ask the question, Casey, is it because Taylor wasn't there? We're starting to see a trend here. He's really performing in games she shows up, and in games she's not, he's stinking it up. I'm starting to wonder if his head's not in the game. He was at a World Series game the night before. I don't know. This is not something we usually see from Travis Kelce. He doesn't have these off nights. It's kind of weird.
It's a little weird. I think it's a trend, and when there's a trend, there's some money to be had. So I will be looking. Obviously, she's not going to Germany, right? She's not going to Germany.
I believe she's on the international leg of her tour right now. So depending on where that is, maybe Germany's an easy flight.
Maybe.
Something to keep an eye on.
If she goes to this game and he performs pretty well, if he performs at a high level, then I think it's time to be on the Swift watch and bet the under when she's not there, bet the over when she's there. I think that's what we have to start doing until we're proven wrong. And that's in my game plan going forward. But yeah, I mean, there's just something off about this offense right now. They can't put points on the board. They can move the ball up and down the field. They have yet to figure out the red zone issues. And we're halfway through the season. It's just not like the Chiefs. And on top of that, they blow out the really bad teams, which is good to see when you're a good team. But they struggled. They struggle with some really good teams here. And they struggled against the Broncos of all teams that couldn't be any lower, couldn't be any worse. The morale for the Denver Broncos has never been lower. And they go and lose a game the way that they did, 24-9. It's just strange. It's just very strange to me. I get the possibility of the flu that Mahomes might have been dealing with, and the blizzard, all the different outside effects, but you only put up 9 points? Are we kidding? 9? That's just not the Chiefs offense that I know.
Yeah, maybe that flu story with Mahomes was more than we've all learned. Maybe he really was not feeling great at all. But look, you're playing. If you're out there in the NFL game, I'm grading you on how you play, because if you're hurt, you need to not play. So he played, and he did not play well enough. So I think all the excuses are for naught. I think the Chiefs just played a bad game. And like I said in the rundown, I really do think it was a fluke. I mean, we've seen this Chiefs team just at the top of the AFC for well over 5-7 years now. This team's going to find it again, but they don't have any time to waste. One thing we know about playing the Dolphins is you're going to have to score offensively. So if the Chiefs offense is going to take some time to find itself again, it doesn't have that. There's not a game against the Raiders mixed in there. Maybe that game against the Broncos was supposed to be the find it game for the offense, and it just wasn't that way. If the Chiefs offense comes out and can't figure it out in the red zone, can't put touchdowns on the board again this week, it could get ugly in Germany.
Yeah, and what's very strange to me was the game plan going into that game. I understand I understand that they got down early. They got down. It was 0-7. Then it was 3-7. Chiefs fumbled, and then it was 3-14. And from there on, the Chiefs were just throwing the ball nonstop in a blizzard. And that I get you have Patrick Mahomes, but he's clearly not feeling well. You ran the ball a total of 16 times. 3 of those were from Patrick Mahomes, might I add. 3. That is just not a recipe to win in a blizzard, let alone your quarterback being under the weather. What are we doing why? Why are we doing that, Andy? Why are we doing that, Andy? You're better than that. You're smarter than that. You got to run the football in a blizzard. You got to give your quarterback some rest. That was just another very troublesome thing that I saw as well.
And this isn't the Chiefs of old with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield who you don't trust. You have Isaiah Pacheco, who has been unbelievable this year. Of the 16 carries the Chiefs had against the Broncos this week, he had 8 of them and got 5 yards a carry. I mean, that's unbelievable production. I cannot figure out why they went away from him on Sunday. Maybe they felt like the deficit was too far to overcome running the ball. I'm not sure. But the Chiefs need to get the ball to Isaiah Pacheco. We've talked about their lack of weapons on the outside for a lot of time on this show. And Travis Kelce figures out how to just do it all in the receiving game. Well, you need a run game when you only have one guy on the outside. And in order to truly let Kelce go, they're going to have to keep giving the ball to Pacheco. And that's what they've done so far this year that has let the offense really succeed. And then when they go away from him, they score 9 points in Denver. So I think it's really crucial for the Chiefs not to fall in love with Patrick Mahomes, not to fall in love with Travis Kelce. Very similar to what I said with Miami and Tyreek Hill. Get the other guys involved. Run the ball with Pacheco. Throw the ball to Jerick McKinnon. Get the other guys involved. Sky Moore, just 1 reception for a first-round receiver just a couple of years ago. Ridiculous. He was great at Western Michigan. You drafted him in the first round. Use the man. I just don't get it, Casey.
Yeah, for a guy that is touted as one of the best offensive minds in football, I get you need the talent, but you certainly don't need a Hall of Fame receiver and a Hall of Fame tight end to make magic happen. That's just my thought. I don't think you need that much help to. If you're one of the greatest minds in all of football, I'm sure you can figure out how to get the rest of this offense going at some capacity. I think it starts with not throwing the ball 34 times in the blizzard. I'll just put it like that. Now, Andy Reid isn't known to be one to blunder like that, so I'll give it a pass. But it is possibly a model that we can use the rest of the season. If he wants to start throwing the ball, be all pass happy, and not run the ball some, then maybe that's the model moving forward. But, again, like I said about the Dolphins, the bright spot on this team right now, the Chiefs defense, man, they are very... They came out of nowhere for me. I should have seen it coming. They've got a really good defensive front. They have possibly a Hall of Fame defensive tackle right in the middle of their defense. But George Karlaftis, one of their first-round picks a year ago, he's been playing well. Trent McDuffie, he's come into his own. He's been able to shut down some of the best receivers in the NFL this season. They've got a great secondary. They've got really great linebackers who know how to get pressure to the quarterback. This team gave up the most points it's given up all season to the Denver Broncos. That is insane. 24 points is the most they've given up all season long, and they give up an average of 16 points a game. Does that sound like Chiefs football to you?
His defense has been elite this year. It's been at the tops of the league in almost every category. It's truly just hitting on all cylinders. Nick Bolton is out until the playoffs. Leo Chenal stepped up this weekend, but can he continue to do that in the middle of the defense? Nick Bolton is one of the league's best middle linebackers. Now you're playing a rookie, maybe a second-year player with Chenal out of Wisconsin at the linebacker position. That's a big change for the defense to change your signal caller in the middle of that. And Chris Jones takes a lot of weight off his shoulders, like you said, probably a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. Just truly a presence in the interior of that defense that makes it really hard for opposing offenses. But I'm going to keep an eye on that linebacking core. I think that's something to really watch as they plug and play new guys.
Yeah, and I like Leo Chanel. I think he was Wisconsin. I think he was a Wisconsin
Wisconsin.
linebacker. Yep. I I liked him out of the draft. I thought Bengals might potentially go after him. I don't remember what draft class that was specifically.
He's either a rookie or a second year player. I just can't place it right now.
Yeah, I think I had him possibly going to the Bengals before they signed Pratt and Wilson to their deals. I think it was 2 years ago because I was kind of probably planned to replace those guys. That's probably where my mind was when I thought about it. But I like Leo Chanel. I think he could step in and be a good enough replacement for Nick Bolton. But Nick Bolton, man, he's really good at getting pressure when his name is called, when he's able to blitz. He runs over the running backs. He runs over that chip. He runs over guys that are assigned to him. He's just as powerful as a defensive end. So it's going to be kind of hard to replace that, but we'll see. Let's see how it looks going forward. They have a really tough test against the Dolphins, especially if they can get that run game going. The spread is Kansas City -1.5. The over/under is 50.5. So they think there's going to be a lot of points this game. Jacob, who are you going with in this game?
I'm going to take the Chiefs. And I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to take the Chiefs. Like we said, talking about the Dolphins, we just haven't seen it against a good team, and the Chiefs are the best. When you're talking about the standard in the NFL, that right now is the Chiefs. And I don't know that I'm going to bet on Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins offense to go in there and get it done. I guess not go in there, go over to Germany and get it done. I think the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are going to bounce back. We have not seen that offense play that poorly as they did last week, maybe in his whole tenure there. They're going to bounce back this week, and the Chiefs are going to get it done.
Yeah, I'm just not ready to bet on the Dolphins. I'm not ready to just say Tyreek Hill's going to destroy this team. This is the first time they're playing each other, the first time they're meeting up since he's been traded. So maybe there's a revenge sort of spitefulness going on there that can lead to him having a great game. But he's going up against Trent McDuffie. He was able to lock up Justin Jefferson this season. I don't know, man. The Miami Dolphins interior is a little suspect, or just the offensive line in general is a little suspect. I think they get the ball out pretty fast. That's why Tua isn't sacked so much. But against Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, I don't know. This is a tough one, though. I mean, 1.5, two really great teams. I don't think you can go wrong either way. I just think that we both feel like we're not ready to bet on the Dolphins just yet. They got to prove to us that they can beat these teams going forward. And that leads us to another great matchup this week. Cowboys versus Eagles. Another team that hasn't really proven to be able to beat their older brother in the Eagles. Not really older brother, but you get it. Bigger brother. These two teams have great history amongst each other, but as of late, it feels like the Eagles have just dominated this matchup. It feels like the Eagles are getting back to their former selves, but the Cowboys, they're a little feisty. Jacob, what are your thoughts on these two teams?
I think my Cowboys thoughts are very similar to my Dolphins thoughts right now. Just absolutely steamroll the bottom tier teams in the league. You beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and you beat them convincingly. But when it's time to play that upper tier of teams, even that second tier of teams, I have no faith in the Dallas Cowboys. Look, when you're playing, bottom tier teams, Dak's going to roll. This offense is going to roll. And then when you get in the ring against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, I just don't think Dak is going to be able to play mistake-free football and get this team to win. Look, they rolled this last weekend, and we still saw some hiccups in the offense. They ran everything through CeeDee Lamb. Truly a breakout game for CeeDee Lamb after complaining about targets just a couple weeks ago. But then Tony Pollard gets minimal touches in a game where you score 40 points on offense. That's just ridiculous. They don't seem to have a sense of getting everyone involved every game. They seem to pick their spots and attack, which works against that lower level team, but you can't do that against true competitors. And I think that's where the Cowboys are going to continue to have problems.
Yeah, they seem to they can pass when they want to. They can run when let me rephrase that. They are forced to pass and they can do it really well. They are forced to run, and they can do it really well. But they can never find a good balance between the two to where you can truly say this team's balanced. And they're capable of being balanced. But like you said, I mean, 12 touches for 53 yards. I mean, what are we doing? Isn't this the whole point, is to kind of get the play action going, let Dak Prescott roll out and throw bombs away at the play action? I guess not. I mean, he threw for 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, an interception. I don't know, man. It was a little strange. It was a little strange that they couldn't really find the run game. It felt like they were just force feeding CeeDee Lamb, which it worked. I can't really complain too much, but yeah, I mean, like you said, Cowboys beat up on the really bad teams, struggle against good teams, and sometimes they have that hiccup where they will lose to a bad team, like the Cardinals. And a lot of it has to do with Dak Prescott. What sort of version of Dak Prescott are you going to get for that day? Are you going to get a version that we saw against the Rams, where he's on point, not going to miss a throw, 300-yard day, 4 touchdown sort of day? Or are you going to get the Cardinals day, where he struggles, and when he's got the ball in his hands late in the game, cost you a game with a costly interception, with a costly turnover? Until the Cowboys learn to beat good teams, and especially on the road, I just don't have a lot of faith in the offense at the moment. But unlike the offense,
One bright spot. Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead if you're going to talk about the offense.
one bright spot for the offense that really showed up for the first time this last week, Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks, 3 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Just his second touchdown of the year, far and away his most yards on his second most receptions. If they can get the wide receiver 2 that they went out and traded for, and that vision can come to fruition with CeeDee Lamb seemingly coming into his own as a truly dominant number 1 weapon, that offense could take the next step. I think that's something that they truly needed to see from Brandon Cooks, and we saw a flash of it on Sunday.
Another thing, too, to keep an eye on before we move on from the Dallas offense, Tyron Smith and Michael Gallup are currently questionable. So we'll see if that ends up showing up for them in the game against the Eagles. That could be some pieces that are really important, especially Tyron Smith. That guy is a Pro Bowl, probably Hall of Fame offensive tackle that you're going to be without. So we'll see where that goes. But one thing that I have no questions about, no hesitation whatsoever, is this defense. This defense is just super talented. I don't think there's a scenario where, unless Micah Parsons is hurt, where this team isn't just a top 5 defense at any point in this season. Because I thought with Diggs going down that maybe they would lose a step in the secondary. Nope. DaRon Bland just picks up right after that and plays even better, might even consider. And the D-line just getting after people, which I was really surprised when I did some research on this. The Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys have played the same amount of games. The Bengals actually have more pressures and more sacks than the Dallas Cowboys. And we consider that group just the top of the league, top 5 in the league. So I'll let that sink in for some of you viewers at home. Dallas, though, that defense, it's elite. It's great.
Absolutely. And Micah Parsons is really what makes that thing go. He's such an elite player, such a difference maker, both on ball and off ball as an edge rusher. That's all they need. If number 11's in the game, then that defense has a shot, and it's proven that defense has been a dominant unit. You touched on DaRon Bland, 3 pick sixes already this year, 4 interceptions total. That's just absurd numbers. The NFL record, 5 pick sixes in one season. You have to think that he's well on his way there just 8 weeks into the season this year. He's filled that Trayvon Diggs role perfectly, jumping routes, creating turnovers, getting extra possessions for the offense. I was really worried about this unit when Diggs went down this offseason because he is such an important player for how everything works on the back end of that defense. And like you said, DaRon Bland has filled those shoes perfectly. This group's talented front to back. I don't expect anything to change the rest of this year. They're going to continue to dominate the rest of the league. But another group that has been dominating the league is the Eagles offense. A.J. Brown, 125 yards in, I believe it's 5 straight games now. Jalen Hurts turning the corner, starting to look like himself from last year, even though he still doesn't seem to be 100%. DeAndre Swift, the dominant force in the backfield that they traded for. Casey, this Eagles offense looks really good.
Yes, it does. It looks really good. And again, we sat here and we're like, man, it doesn't look like it's all the way back. There's something off, but they're still like a top 5 offense. They're still really, really productive. And man, A.J. Brown, he's just dominating the NFL right now. Dominating. And I think the issue is that they're not getting it to Devontae Smith. They're not getting it to Dallas Goedert as much as we saw last year. The run game is just a step behind what it was last year, but it's still pretty dominant. I mean, they've got 1,000 yards rushing so far this season. They're carrying the ball 4.1 yards a carry. DeAndre Swift, as advertised, 5 yards a carry, 571 yards this season, 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, 6 on the year. He's able to run the ball pretty efficiently right now. All that being said, I still believe that there's another level to this team. Like they are not all the way to where their peak is. I think they're still figuring that out. I think it involves getting Devontae the ball a little bit more. But man, Jalen Hurts has been on fire the last couple games. It's hard for me to believe that they have not been able to find these guys the ball. But they've been very, very efficient the last couple weeks. So kudos to them.
No, you're absolutely right, Casey. The dominance that the Eagles offense showed last season, I think, gives us a false level of expectation for what we should be seeing. That offense last year was unbelievable from start to finish, just toying with teams up and down the field. This year, they seem to have found their level a little bit, but still a very dominant offense. I think people have reservations about the Eagles just because Jalen Hurts isn't quite the MVP candidate we saw last year. The defense isn't quite the record-breaking unit we saw last year. But this team is really good front to back on both ends of the ball. Devontae Smith this week caught all 7 of his targets for 99 yards and a touchdown, and that is absolutely crucial for this offense taking another step. They have 2 elite receivers, and if A.J. Brown is going to keep playing like this on one end, getting Devontae Smith involved on the other would be amazing for Jalen Hurts and even for DeAndre Swift. If you have 2 elite receivers on the outside, that run game is really going to take off. Speaking of Swift, there's an issue going on in Philadelphia right now with the backfield. Kenneth Gainwell, 2 fumbles in the last 2 weeks, complete refusal to give him carries in the second half last week, all going to DeAndre Swift. As a proud DeAndre Swift fantasy owner, I'm ecstatic. But talking about actual NFL football, having one back is not a sustainable model. The Eagles, I expected to go get a second back before the trade deadline passed yesterday. That wasn't the case. You have to think if they're going to put Kenneth Gainwell back in there, maybe Boston Scott gets more carries. The way the running back market works, a free agent could always come available down the line. I think the Eagles would definitely be in the market for a second running back.
Yeah, I mean, they got Rashad Penny, Boston Scott. I think one of those guys will probably end up emerging. But if they don't,
you have to hope it's Penny. Penny put great stuff on film in Seattle, and we just haven't really seen him get touches to do anything of worth in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. If they don't have faith in those 4 or 5 guys, I mean, they should have gotten someone, because I think that's a really key component to this team is being able to run the ball with a really good rushing attack. And DeAndre Swift, he can get nicked up at any point. He's a smaller back, if I remember correctly. He's 5'9", kind of small, compact, but he's been nicked up a couple times throughout his career. Hopefully they can find something from a secondary role in the running back situation that they've got, either Boston Scott or Rashad Penny. But the one thing that was, and people have mentioned it in the chat, and I didn't actually see this play, but you did, Jacob, the tush push, the fake tush push.
The fake tush push. We had something that almost never happens. The tush push got stopped. The Eagles fumbled on a snap at the 1-yard line. The Commanders recovered. And then the next drive, the Eagles lined up for another tush push. The Commanders all packed in against the center. And then Jalen Hurts reverse pivots out and hands it to DeAndre Swift, who just scampers around the corner, walks in without being touched for a touchdown. Casey, if they're going to start running fakes off of this tush push formation, this is going to get ugly. If they work a pass in there, maybe a jet sweep, something like that, if teams are selling out completely to block those A gaps, these reverses, these fakes are going to be wide open.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I get the idea that the tush push, I guess that's what we've all decided that's what it's called, not the brotherly shove anymore. If they want to say that it's not unstoppable, that you can stop it and yet still be able to do fakes off of it, reverses that are just wide open, yeah, then I start to have some issues with it, because if you can just get free like if that was pulled, like let's just say that they decided to do a tush push at their 25. Let's say that it's 4th and 1 on their 25 and they find some end around. It's just wide open and it goes for 75 yards. What are we doing, man? Like that's just not good. Not good.
I'm with you, Casey. I'm strong anti-tush push. Mark Fetters makes a great point in the chat. No one does it as well as the Eagles. That's the best point that can be made for pro tush pushers. You can't call it an unstoppable play if none of the other 31 teams can figure it out. The Eagles have mastered it. They have a quarterback who can squat 600 pounds. They have the best center of my lifetime. I think the Eagles might have just found the perfect recipe for the tush push, even though I want it out of the league.
Yeah, and that brings us to their defense. Their defense, they always seem to struggle against the Commanders. I'll give you that. They struggled against them last year. I think they even lost to them. Their first game that they lost last season was against the Commanders, and they struggled there too. I don't know what it is about them. No idea. I guess it's just a rivalry game that the two teams just go at it. But this team is still very good on defense. It's a top 10 defense. They were able to hold Miami to 17. You have it written down right there. But I have some concerns. They're starting to stack some injuries that make me worried. Jalen Carter with a back injury, left early last week. The cornerback room getting thinner with Bradley Roby, still questionable. They added Kevin Byard, but is that going to be enough to help them with the secondary? I don't know. It seems like that's kind of the weak spot of this group at the current moment, although it's very strong. What is the outlook of this team versus the Cowboys, Jacob?
I think the crucial piece is Jalen Carter's injury. Not necessarily for this week in a nutshell, but big picture, you can't lose a player like that. He's your first-round pick this year. He's been absolutely dominant to start his rookie year in the top 10 of almost every statistic for interior D linemen. He's been unbelievable, the unquestioned defensive rookie of the year favorite, and he is going to miss time, it seems. He suggested that, or projected that he's not going to play this week. Probably looking at a couple more weeks on top of that. Hopefully Jalen Carter can get back on the field because he's such a big part of what that team does against the run.
Yeah. Sorry. Elliot really distracted me with this trivia question in the chat. Yes, it's a pair, I think. Sorry. Yeah, the Eagles defense, though, I think without Jalen Carter, that's a pivotal piece against the Cowboys. Without there being that pressure or that front two guys with Jalen Carter in the middle, that team not being able to stop the run, it could be a long day for the Eagles. I think those two are really pivotal pieces, and when you take one of them out, it gets a little ugly. I'll stand on that.
We talked about Dallas's inability to establish both the pass and run game. If the middle of if the middle of Philadelphia's defense is injured and banged up and they can run the ball, we just talked about what they're dealing with in the back end. Kevin Byard has only been there for a matter of days, not even weeks at this point. I'm definitely worried about how this Eagles defense is going to look if they can't get some of those injuries taken care of before Sunday.
Right, right. And, you know, I don't think that Bradley Roby is. I don't think that's a serious long-term injury, but it's bad timing. The injuries are a really bad time when you're facing the Dallas Cowboys. You don't want to give up a game against them and fall behind. They wouldn't fall too far behind in the division because they beat Washington twice now. Have they played the Giants yet? Or I don't think. I'll look this up really quickly. This is really bad podcasting, but I think that they would still be ahead of the Dallas Cowboys, even if they lost one in the division.
They're both undefeated in the division, and they're both the Dallas has 2 conference losses. So yes, if Philly loses, they would both be 2-loss teams. But with the conference record, Philly would still be number 1.
Gotcha. Yeah, but very big game for both these teams. Jacob, the spread is -3 Philadelphia. What are you going with?
I'm taking Philly. And I feel really good about it. I know we just talked about their injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but that does not outweigh Dak Prescott against elite defenses to me. I still think banged up, this Eagles defense is still elite. They have playmakers at all 3 levels. And I think they're going to get to Dak. I think Dak's going to turn the ball over. Love Philly -3.
Yeah, I also like Philly -3.
Well, Casey, I'm going to change my pick to Cowboys +3. Elliott said he loves Philly -3. I've been watching off the bench. I know he's a terrible gambler. So Cowboys +3 is going to be my official pick for this game.
Yeah, I won't change my pick in honor of the integrity of making my pick. But I think that's a fair point. That's a good parameter. That is a good reason to change your pick. If Elliott is on it, then you need to really consider your choice in the matter. And by the way, he thinks that you're smelly it, so I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
I've been told by Elliott that I am smelly it many, many times, and I don't know what that means every single time he says it. So if someone would like to fill me in at some point after the show, maybe that'd be great. Moving on to the biggest game of the weekend for sure. Everyone involved here, Bengals Bills Sunday Night Football. That's going to be an exciting one, Casey.
Yes, it is. I cannot wait for this game. It's going to be very, very high energy. These two teams, they had a very unfortunate accident happen the last time that they met at Paycor. Damar Hamlin, we all know about that situation. But this is a new season, a new year. Buffalo Bills, they've struggled a little bit. They haven't looked like their old selves. They haven't looked like the year before. The Bengals, they hadn't looked the same until just this last week. They might have turned their corner. These two teams have great offenses. I think they both have pretty good defenses. I think the Bills have had a couple injuries that have derailed some of those defensive prowess that they had before. But, man, this is going to be a great game. Bengals, Joey B, all the way back. The fact that they went under center.
All the way back.
The fact that they went under center opened up half of their playbook is what it essentially felt like. It felt like they opened half their playbook up. It looked like that they were just able to absolutely destroy the 49ers, dice them up, chop them up, put them in a stew, eat that stew, and mix it up. I mean, Mixon looked really good. He probably would have had a 100-yard day if we wanted to run the ball even more. The defense, able to get turnovers. The defense stepped up big time, was able to get stops when we needed it. They had a lot of garbage time yards, in my opinion, when you look at the stats. Purdy had like 365 yards throwing, but like 70 to 80 of those yards came off the final drive when they were just trying to drive the ball. Like they dumped it off on those screen plays. But yeah, I think the Bengals are really good. Really good. I think the Bills are also really good. But
this was the first game from the Bengals where I got 60 minutes from both sides of the ball that I felt really good about. We've seen flashes from the defense. We've seen flashes from the offense. But we have never seen them put it together yet this year. And they did that in San Francisco against the league's best team going into the week. Everyone unanimously said San Francisco was unbeatable. There's no way, anyone could embarrass this team. And that's what Cincinnati did. We went in there and we exposed the 49ers. And then Joe Burrow being healthy cannot be overstated. I mean, what he does to this team when he's able to move, when he's able to use his legs, when he's able to escape in the pocket is just truly unbelievable. We saw in the third or fourth play of the game, I'm sure everyone's seen it 10, 15 times at this point, where he throws Nick Bosa off of him, scampers up in the pocket, and then finds T. Higgins across the middle to get a first down. Just an unbelievable play that we haven't been able to see from him yet this year going into this game. And now he's back. And like Casey said, under center, has established the run quite a bit early in the game. And then it lets us get into the play action pass. That under center play calling is such a great addition to the playbook that we absolutely needed. This is the unit that we wanted at the beginning of the year. This is the unit that we seen for the last couple of years. And we said, look, the Bengals are going to come back. We're going to make another run at a Super Bowl this year because of the offense. And that on Sunday was the offense that Bengals fans were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we will be expecting moving forward, in all honesty. I expect them to be that good on offense moving forward. I expect them to be that good on defense moving forward. In all honesty, I think both sides proved a lot this last Sunday for the Bengals. They proved a lot that they could get after the quarterback, they could get turnovers, they can get the stops that they need. It didn't matter that they lost Jesse Bates and Von Bell. They've got enough pieces there to make it still work. Offensively, it looks like when Joe Burrow's fully healthy that they haven't missed a beat. That's what I would basically describe it as. If we look at the Bills offense versus the Bengals defense, Josh Allen still being Superman will create some sort of bad mistake. He will have a turnover at some point in this game, whether that's a fumble, an interception. That's just what he does. He loves playing hero ball. They can capitalize on that, and I think they will. I think that's a really good matchup for the Bengals in terms of what to expect in this game. I think that they can get a turnover at some point. The other thing, too, that was very interesting to see was the Bills looked at playoff Lenny. I don't know if they actually signed him or not. Did they? Yeah. That's
Yep.
that's very strange to me. That screams that they're looking to commit to the run, that they're looking to shore that up. I thought James Cook, and I know he's not the biggest back. We've had that discussion before. He's 5'11", 190, so he's not your 215 sort of in between the tackles back. But the guy Latavius Murray, like, is Latavius Murray that much of a downgrade compared to playoff Lenny? I don't know.
I certainly don't think so. I think they're pretty comparable running backs. But the one thing to keep an eye on for a team like the Bills, who are wanting to go deep into the postseason, Latavius Murray is 34 years old. With a running back that you're pounding in between the tackles as your goal line short yardage back, 34 years old is a lot. And I know Latavius Murray is the oldest running back in the league. That's been reported on quite a bit. But when you're in between the tackles, like I said, that just wears you down more and more. And I think getting a younger running back like Leonard Fournette is crucial to opening up James Cook. I don't think you can use Latavius Murray enough to really let James Cook just be that dynamic third down kind of change of pace back. I think Leonard Fournette's going to get a lot of carries in Buffalo once he gets that playbook under his belt, maybe a week or two.
Just so the chat knows, because you said he's the oldest back, he's actually played, I think that's 9 years, 9 seasons. Played for Oakland, Minnesota, the Saints, the Ravens, the Saints again, Denver, and Buffalo. And he's always been a back that can get you 500-600 yards a season. He had one 1,000-yard season with Oakland. He's a guy that thrives in these red zone sort of roles that he's been given his whole career. It was just weird to see. I guess the age thing is really all it came down to, but playoff Lenny isn't that much younger, right? He's got to be close to 30, right?
Yeah, he's getting up there for sure, but he also has much less miles. Like you just said, Latavius Murray's been in the league for 9 years. Leonard Fournette's been on the couch for the last 6 to 8 months. So he's going to be fresh once he gets back into playing shape. And I think they're just going to use him into the dirt in one season, and they're going to let him walk. I think this is a one focus on trying to get to a Super Bowl this season for the Buffalo Bills. But Leonard Fournette was not the only addition the Bills made at the trade deadline. Obviously, he was a free agent signing, but they traded for Rasul Douglas from Green Bay at DB. With the injuries that they've faced on the defensive side of the ball, that was an absolutely crucial move to keep them afloat defensively. Without Matt Milano, without Tre'Davious White, the two studs on the defensive side of the ball for Buffalo, they've struggled in the games since. Do you think Rasul Douglas is enough to swing the pendulum on that defense, or do you think they're still going to trend in the wrong direction?
I don't know if it's gonna swift or if it's gonna change completely, but I think it's gonna stop it from getting worse. And I think that move came at a really good time. I mean, they're playing the Bengals, who have the best receiving core in the NFL, hands down. And you get a guy in Rasul Douglas, who I actually thought the Bengals would look at, I think, just this offseason. I thought maybe that they would want to get a third corner, possibly let go of Wouzier if it came down to that. Um, it didn't come down to that. Rasul Douglas ended up going back to the Packers, but yeah, he's a good corner. He's not your top echelon corners, but he's a solid corner. He's a solid number two guy. Um, I don't think that it will. I don't think that they'll bleed out. I'll put it like that. I think they've got a good band-aid on there now to where they've stopped the bleeding with Rasul Douglas. The other thing too, before we move on to the defensive side of things, the one thing I thought that was really great to see from the Bills offense was how much they distributed the ball to their different receivers, to Gabe Davis, Kincaid, to Khalil Shakir. They were getting the ball out to all their guys. And unfortunately for everyone that had Stephon Diggs yards, I don't think he hit it this last week, but it was good to see that it wasn't just the Diggs show, that they were able to get the ball out, spread it out. They're going to need that going forward.
And Dalton Kincaid looked absolutely incredible in his first game as the number one tight end for the Bills, truly providing a number two receiving option. Gabe Davis seemed to really be opened up by him finding ways to work in the middle areas of the field, letting Gabe Davis take the deep thirds. I'm really excited for this Bills offense, and I'm starting to wonder if Dawson Knox gets healthy. I know it's just one game, but if Dawson Knox gets healthy, are you so sure that you're rushing him back into the lineup? He certainly hasn't had a game receiving the ball like Kincaid did his first game in many, many years. I love Dalton Kincaid and what he provides to that offense. Obviously, you're going to need more than one tight end, so you want Dawson Knox to be back and be healthy for the playoff push. But I think Kincaid is going to really stake his claim to that number one position.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think Kincaid is there to stay. You look at the numbers, 34 targets, 30 receptions. That's really good. 258 yards, a touchdown. His longest is 22 yards. I'm sure that's going to get larger and larger as the season goes on. I think Kincaid was the right move. I know it came from an injury, but it was the right move at the right time. I think Dawson Knox has just kind of lost a step, and he's not that receiving threat. He's a balanced tight end, a bigger tight end, and this offense is predicated on throwing the football. So I think it was a great move by the Bills to get him more involved. And we'll have to see how he performs against some of the top duos in the league in Pratt and Wilson. And if you want to even include the safeties with Dax Hill, Dax Hill was able to do a pretty good job with Kittle when he was guarding him. Unfortunately, when Nick Scott covered him, he had 3 50-yard gains. That was unnecessary shade at Nick Scott. But, yeah, we'll see how that matchup plays for the Bengals, because I think that's a big deal. I think Kincaid getting more involved in the Bills' offense is going to prove to be very fruitful for them. Now, the other side, which we haven't talked a lot about, is their defense. Their defense has definitely taken a step back with all the injuries that they sustained. It doesn't seem like Von Miller is quite back to his dominant force, if we ever will see that again. Jacob, what do you think the Bills need to do in order to succeed for the Bengals to defend the Bengals?
Get in a time machine, go back a couple weeks and get healthy. Look, I'm not. I've seen people in the chat saying that they're not worried about the Bills, and I hate to say that I agree with them, but I expect the Cincinnati Bengals team to take care of business on Sunday night without really breaking too much of a sweat. You said Rasul Douglas is the perfect addition to going up against the Bengals timing wise. Well, he didn't practice today because, according to the Bills, he, quote, just got there, was how he was listed on the injury report, which I've never seen before. Thought that was kind of funny. But if he continues to not practice this week, Rasul Douglas is not going to play. And that banged up secondary that has let second and third rate receivers get their own is really going to struggle against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who seem to have really found it against a great 49ers defense last week. I don't think this Bills defense in their current state is going to be able to get pressure on Joe Burrow consistently. I don't think they're going to be able to guard our receivers on the outside. I think Joe Mixon's going to be able to run the ball. I really don't think this Bills defense stands much of a chance of really swinging this game.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I'm picking the Bengals. I know I usually ask you first, but I think this is just a no-brainer to me. -2 seems a little low, and I know the Bengals only played a complete game for the first time last week, but it was against the 49ers. And my perception of them has not changed whatsoever despite them losing 3 in a row. I still think they're one of the most unfair teams in the NFL, possibly of all time. So the fact that the Bengals were able to do what they did against them says a lot to me. So I'm taking the
Jack Butler
-2.
points out a great point as well. Josh Allen did not practice today with an injury. Something to keep an eye on going into this game. If you want to jump on that -2 now, I would certainly take it for the Bengals because if there's any chance that Allen doesn't play, that number is going to skyrocket. I'm on the Bengals as well, and I'm going to get on it right after the show.
Yeah, -2 Betfred. I don't think it's genuinely when I did this, I don't think you're going to be able to find -2 anywhere except for Betfred. So you need to get on it as soon as you can because I don't think that's going to last for very long. The number is only climbing. So Get your
and it opened
picks
at
in
1.
now.
So 2 is even a jump. It's climbing fast.
Yeah. We move on to our final game, the Thursday night game, and this is the game we also like to give out some props and some other picks. Titans versus Steelers, a bit of a stinker, but we have some good news. Will Levis, he looked really, really good. And would you know it, DeAndre Hopkins looks like his old self. Maybe he was always his old self, but we didn't know it because we had Ryan Tannehill. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jacob?
2 weeks ago, DeAndre Hopkins sat in a media conference and he said, Ryan Tannehill refuses to throw me the ball when I'm covered. And everyone said, that's a crazy thing to say as a receiver. Why would your quarterback throw it to you when you're covered? Then this week, Will Levis did exactly that, and DeAndre Hopkins left with 3 touchdowns. At some point, you have a dominant receiver on your team, and you have to get him the ball. I know I just talked about CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill, and you can't run your whole offense through one guy. But there's a middle ground. When the discrepancy between your number 1 receiver and your number 2 option is, I believe, Nick Westbrook-Akine is their wide receiver 2. Treylon Burks has missed a lot of time. You have to get the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, and I think that's just going to continue to be the theme of this Titans offense as Will Levis takes over. Young QBs like to find places where they feel comfortable. And what's more comfortable than a receiver that seems to have not dropped a ball in a decade? DeAndre Hopkins is as sure a thing as it gets when the ball comes into his catch radius. He's always going to bring it in. I think his season is just going to boom as long as Levis stays at that quarterback position.
Yeah, as long as Levis just keeps feeding him the ball, I don't see why they don't continue to have a big boom. And you know what's crazy is you said it. Treylon Burks hasn't really been healthy. He came back last week, only had like 2 or 3 targets. I don't know if he's fully healthy yet, but if he can learn to find his role in this offense, we might have something. We might have something here with Will Levis. I don't know, man. Derrick Henry.
Treylon Burks was dominant in college. They took him in the first round. It's unbelievable that he hasn't been able to even find a role in the offense.
Right. And I don't see that continuing. I think he's going to find some sort of role. He's going to be the number 2. DeAndre is going to be the number 1. Derrick Henry, I don't know what to make of him just yet. I think he's on the downswing. I think this is his last year on his contract. I don't know if he's got another 1,600 yard rushing season capable under his. I don't think he's capable of that, but I think he can get you at least 1,000 yard rusher. I think he can make defenses respect the run, which is all you really need to be able to have a great play action threat. And DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks can make that happen. Now, the Titans defense gives up a lot of yards, but they're one of the best in scoring. And that's what matters. If you don't give up a lot of points, and I know maybe one of those games where they didn't give up a lot of points was against the Bengals. That was a 3-27 effort, but it happened. That was on their schedule. They beat us 3-27. So you got to just take it and say, this defense, they don't give up a lot of points. They just don't. And they've got a great defensive line. They haven't got a lot of pressure this season, but they are very capable of it. Jeffrey Simmons, D'Amico Autry, and Arden Key, those three guys can really get after you. I'm more concerned about the secondary moving forward. They traded Kevin Byard. I don't think that the secondary is as bad as it was last season, but it's still pretty suspect. Definitely bottom tier. Jacob, what are your thoughts on this Titans defense?
Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons is a superstar. There's no other way around it. He is what can make this defense respectable. And there's not a whole lot of guys, a whole lot of dudes across that defense anywhere else. They went out and spent good money on Sean Murphy Bunting this offseason to hopefully, take some of that weight off the secondary who really struggled last year. And he just has not performed to the level that they expected. Trading Kevin Byard, a two-time Pro Bowler, an all-pro caliber safety, I think things are just going to get worse defensively in Tennessee. I don't think, this Tennessee team's going to be all that great the rest of the year. I think the way they handled the trade deadline makes me think that they're kind of phoning this thing in and planning for the future.
Right. And it doesn't help that they're playing the Steelers, who are really, really good. I mean, their defense is one of the top defenses in all the league. It doesn't matter how bad their offense gets. It just seems like they always play really good football. And they're really good at three things. They get pressure on the quarterback, they're able to stop the run, and they get lots of turnovers. Those three things alone allow them to hang in these ball games. It allows them to have a above 500 record at the current moment. And it's going to be really important against a rookie quarterback who are known to fold under pressure and turn the ball over quite a bit. And then when you need to lean on the run game with Derrick Henry, I think the Steelers defense is going to be able to stop them, which maybe you all kind of realize where I'm going to lean at when I make my pick. But I think the Steelers defense is the big key to this game. I just think they're really, really good. Unfortunately, they have maybe the worst offense I've ever seen in my entire life, which is a bit of an exaggeration, but it's really bad, Jacob. It's just so bad.
Look, Jack Butler pointed it out there in the chat. We didn't talk about it when we talked about the defense there, but the best thing going for the Titans defense is they get to play Matt Canada, the Steelers offensive coordinator. I mean, what an abysmal offense it's been this whole year. George Pickens, Kenny Pickett have shown flashes, but it's just not been enough. I mean, George Pickens has been unbelievable with the ball in his hands this year, almost 20 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns on the year, but he can't even get 5 targets a game. They refuse to throw the man the ball, and I just don't get it. Deontay Johnson, a receptions machine in the slot there, but he cannot find his way into the end zone no matter what it takes. I don't know what the issue is in Pittsburgh. They seem to have the players where you think that offense should work at least to be a respectable level. I mean, Najee Harris was a dominant back his rookie year. He was a first-round pick. Jaylen Warren has shown great ability in the backfield there in Pittsburgh. They're going to figure this out eventually. I don't know if it's all the play calling. Maybe there's something else going on in the locker room that we aren't aware of. But I like a lot of the pieces on this Pittsburgh offense. I just have a hard time thinking they're going to be this bad for much longer.
Right. And I think part of it, too, is that their offensive line is still trying to gel. It's still trying to figure itself out. And when that gets taken care of, I think this offense will figure itself out. The one thing I did do some research on was when the Steelers win ball games, it's usually because George Pickens has a fantastic day. Every time they've won this season, George Pickens has been the leading receiver, has had a touchdown, and it's been over for like 100 yards. He doesn't catch the ball a lot, but he has a dominant day. That's something to look forward in tomorrow's game. If George Pickens starts having a really good game, I might just doesn't matter what the money line is. I might just throw some money on that and see if it works because that's a trend I'm noticing. And you know, Deontay Johnson, another thing too, and we'll get into this here in a second. His first game back was targeted 14 times. That might unlock another key to this offense that we just haven't seen yet, some consistency in the pass game. And they need it. They need it bad because they can't just rely on George Pickens to catch deep balls all game long and win like that. I think that's their problem is that they've won too many games off of explosive plays, and they just aren't consistent at making explosive plays. So you get these low-score games where, I mean, George Pickens has a great day, but that's it. That's their offense. And part of it is because they can't get the run game going. They haven't had someone to be able to just dump the ball off to that intermediate part of the field. Deontay Johnson's back, so maybe we'll see some more offense here for the Steelers. I'm picking the Steelers this week. I just think that
I am as well.
I've said it before. I thought the Titans were pretty irrelevant this season going into the year, and I was basically right for the most part up until last week where they won I would say a decent game against the Falcons and Will Levis having a come out party with DeAndre Hopkins, but I just don't think that you're going to get a 3-touchdown game from DeAndre Hopkins this week. You're just not against the Steelers. And it would take Treylon Burks, it would take the whole offense for the Titans to be what it was back in 2021, where they were able to run really, really good. They were able to run off that play action, throw the ball deep to DeAndre, which would have been A.J. Brown in this case, throw the ball to Treylon Burks, and, I just don't think that's going to happen this week. I just don't. So I'm going with Pittsburgh minus 2.5.
I'm with you as well. Will Levis showed a great exhibition in his first game, but Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches in the entire league. Pittsburgh is one of the best coached teams in the entire league. They're not going to make mistakes, I don't think, and I think they're going to force Will Levis to make mistakes. And that's the perfect segue into our props of the night, because the first one I have for tomorrow is Will Levis to throw an interception. Minus 150. There's a little bit of juice, but I love Will Levis to throw an interception tomorrow night. He was prone to making mistakes in college. He's made mistakes every level that he's played in. He's a risk taker, and that's part of what got him here. But against that Steelers defense, he's definitely going to cough something up. And to go hand in hand with that, if you really want to get greasy tomorrow night, Pittsburgh Steelers plus 1,000 to score a touchdown with the defense. Pittsburgh defense, anytime touchdown score, plus 1,000. I think that's great odds with a rookie quarterback again. And I just think Mike Tomlin's going to get the job done, calling plays for the defense, and they're going to get to him.
I like the big prop there, the plus 1,000 for the defense to score. That is certainly interesting. I have Deontay Johnson receptions. I think that is way too low. It's currently sitting at 4.5. Go get it now. And I don't know if you already said DeAndre Hopkins receptions. That's also too low. I think it's at 3.5. That's too low. We got to get those receptions.
One worry with that line is that he is questionable. He didn't practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If he's banged up and doesn't play a high snap count, I would maybe be worried about that receptions line. But if he practices tomorrow, Friday, or I guess just tomorrow before the game and is ready to play, I expect that receptions number to hit as well for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, and I personally, if both guys play, I'm probably going to do both singles on those and parlay them. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think both those numbers are way too low. I get that both teams have I guess the Titans have a solid pass rush. I wouldn't say a solid defense, but they got an average defense. Steelers have a great defense. I get that. But DeAndre Hopkins is going to be force-fed the ball. And Deontay Johnson will also be force-fed the ball. That is literally Deontay Johnson's whole purpose, is to be fed the ball. If you've had him in fantasy over the years, you know he's just a catching machine. And 4.5 is just way too low. I get he's...
In the last 4 games, Deontay Johnson has been healthy. He has 27 targets. That's almost 7 targets a game the last 4 games. He needs to catch 5 of those 7, which is reasonable for any receiver to hit that line. I love that 4.5, Casey. Great find.
Yep. And then if I was going to do one more, if I was going to pick one more to juice it up a little bit, I think, in all honesty, I'm going to go with Will Levis rush yards, because he's going to be running around all day. He's a younger quarterback. Young quarterbacks like to run around. I like Will Levis and his rush yards. It's not a lot. It's only 6.5, so I'll take that.
That's another great one. He got busy with his legs at Kentucky in college. Hopefully he does some of that in the league. I think that would make him a much more exciting player than just sitting in the pocket.
Yeah. Well, that concludes our week 9 preview for the NFL. I hope you all enjoyed our show tonight. We had a nice crowd tonight. I appreciate everyone in the chat. Mark, Lure Up, Jack, Alex, Chase, Elliot, who joined in earlier, Iron Force. Thank you guys for watching. Jacob, do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up the show?
One last thing I would say is we got a big game down here in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. I got to get one Roll Tide in before the show ends. Big one against LSU.
Big one. Big one. If they win that game, I don't remember where LSU is at on the rankings, but if they win that one, they might move up a little bit, right? They have a chance to still sneak in if they can win out from here.
A win on Saturday would clinch the SEC West and all but guarantee a showdown with Georgia in the SEC championship, which all us Alabama fans know that the rankings don't matter. If we win out, business takes care of itself. So this is a big one on Saturday. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Win out for Roll Tide.
Of course.
IO
as well.
I'm not an Ohio State fan, but I just thought I would toss that one up for you. Anyways, we're going to wrap up the show here. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next Wednesday, 7:30 EST. I've been Mac.
And I've been JT.